Here we are, finally getting around to looking at the little generator. Opened up the casing now, and what I have to get into is here. I actually really, all I want to do is have a look inside here, but it's so difficult getting to it. I have to take this entire item here away. That's the water pump and the belt. So it's not too difficult, it just takes a bit of a time. And it's a bit annoying having to do that job, a much bigger job than just opening up back here and but you just can't get to it and see what's happening there. The impeller for the water pump is in there, and I'm hoping that's what's gone and is causing the generator to cut off with overheating. That's the likely problem, and we'll have a look now and see what happens. Of course, one very good idea is to make sure that that seacock down there is closed. Clearly it's wide open at the moment, so I have to get down to here and close it off. So not too difficult a thing to do. So there we are. Okay, all closed. So that's a good job done. So in order to get the water pump off with that belt, I've got to loosen that belt in order to get the pump down there off. I have to undo these clips, the hoses. Those metal hoses have to be released from the rubber hoses that they're attached to with this clip, so that has to be undone first. So here's the one of them is nice and loose. So now we have to go for the other one, which is further back, a bit more fiddly. So in order to release the pump and get it off its mount, I'm having to take these nuts off here, and it's a little bit fiddly, but it does help if I turn it the right way, of course. Okay, so now we release it. Okay, and you've got a couple of these to take off, and that is what's mounting the pump. It won't release until, without the pipes on either end of it released as well. The clips there, the banjo clips, pipe clamps. In Europe and America, they use different names for the same thing. Of course, no job is ever as straightforward as you think. I just came across this bunch of wires at the back there that are kind of hanging loose and need tying up and out of the way, so had to go and find a cable tie, a zip tie to tie that up out of the way before I go any further. Okay, so that was a relatively quick fix. Just cut the end off that, and that's those wires held well up out of the way of the seawater system coming in. So now I have to get to that hose clamp down there and release that. And yes, this one is getting there. I'm actually being able to move the nut with this one. So the good news now is that I can pull the pump up, and that releases this belt, so I can get it off now. Okay, so here's the belt off. That's really good. So now I can get the hoses off the end of the pump to release the pump and get the pump off completely and have a look inside the impeller housing. Well, that took a little bit of persuading, but here we are with the pump out now, and now the end that I want to get to is this end, which was the one that you couldn't get to when it was in situ, so I just have to undo those wing nuts now. It's either wing nuts or little screws and nuts and bolts there, and so now I'll just undo that and have a look inside. Fairly easy job to do. Use the pliers just to get started, but then just a very easy job undoing them. And then we'll have a look and see what the impeller looks like inside. Just lift this off. Notice there are little washers here, so be careful not to lose those. And oh dear, that's annoying. That looks perfectly fine in there. I can't see any problem with that at all. Very disappointing. I was hoping to find a damaged impeller, because, you know, why else would the genset decide that it was getting overheated? And so to find that this is fine means that there's a problem somewhere else, of course. That's really, really upsetting, really annoying. Well, I had to, of course, do something about that, and I decided that maybe I should change that impeller anyway and try running the generator again. But it was impossible, absolutely impossible, to get that impeller out. I've no idea why, but fortunately I was able to move on to my backup seawater pump, which we can see here, slightly different from the previous one because it doesn't have the little wing nuts to attach the cover over the pump. It has these little screws, and that caused a slight problem. Of course, I've put in the new impeller in here in this backup pump, and then of course put the cover on over it. And that was where, in fact, I ran into a little bit of trouble with these screws. If you look carefully, you can see that two of the heads of the screws there are different from the other two. One I misplaced, and the other one decided to jump down the drain hole in the galley sink. So I had to go searching in my screw box. Luckily, I found two that were the same pitch, the same thread that would go in, not too long. So I've been able to make do, and yeah, so things got a little bit convoluted in getting it all back together again. And I cannot get the old impeller out of the other water pump, no matter what I do. And I've had several other people try. There's something happening just to stop it. Maybe the metals have got corroded in the middle. I don't know. It just will not come out. Anyway, so this pump is all ready to go now. And interestingly, though, when I looked in the water, the freshwater reservoir down in here, this was actually almost empty of water. So that would definitely explain the overheating if the freshwater coolant was pretty well non-existent. I've topped it up with some coolant, and in fact the main engine needed the same treatment. It's probably going to need more. So I now need to get the pump back in place here where it's missing, and so that's what I'm about to do now. Get that back in place, run it a little bit, and then top up the fresh water a little bit more, and hopefully that will solve the problem. I'm really keeping my fingers crossed on this one. It's become quite a stressful time. This little generator has caused me quite a lot of stress. Of course, the other problem I'm going to have, and it often gets pretty fiddly, is connecting up this pipe to the water pump, and also that pipe down there also needs to be connected up. So I'm just going to use a little bit of Vaseline on the pipes to help the connections along, make it a little bit easier hopefully. So that's both ends, a little bit of Vaseline, just a tiny touch on both ends of the metal here, and hopefully the rubbers will slip over more easily. A very well used jar of Vaseline, this one. It's I hate to think how many years old it is. It's seen a lot of good use. Well, that's the pipes back in place. That's the bottom one, and here we have the top one. So now I just have to fit the belt back on, and then fit this onto the stand here, and then we'll be able to test it. Okay, so finally we get the belt on. It wasn't too difficult, a bit of a struggle, but not too bad. And now I've just got to replace the screws that hold it onto that mount there. Well, they're coming reasonably well, the two of them. Of course, I can't tighten them too much without making sure that the belt is reasonably in tension. So we'll get it most of the way, and then we'll adjust as we need to. In fact, I need two hands. I've got to hold the bolt in place on the back side. It's got a squared off section under the head there to hold it in place, but I need to keep pushing it, so I'm going to have to stop. The video at this moment. Okay, so the bolts are nicely tensioned, the nuts are in place, and the belt is fine. So I'm going to now start up and see whether what happens. I might have to start it up for a short while and then stop it quickly and then check the water situation. Well, the fuel filter looks pretty good. The sight glass isn't showing any obvious signs of water, and I'm just going to check the strainer here, make sure that that's clean and okay before I open the seacock and try running it. Surprise, surprise, I can't budge that. So I've just gone and picked up my little belt thing I'm going to put around there and try to loosen it with that. So this is quite useful. Well, the filter doesn't look too bad. A little bit dirty, not bad, but I'll give it a good clean and then put it back again. I certainly needed this rubber band to help me undo the glass top, the cover. It was pretty stiff. So again, I'll put a little bit of Vaseline around somewhere to just help it to come back on again more easily. So off to clean this now. Well, it's definitely looking quite a bit cleaner than it was. So we'll put that back in, and then we can open the seacock and get the thing running, get this generator running, I hope. Well, this little reservoir has got a reasonable amount of coolant in it. I've not filled it all the way to the top, so it's possibly an expansion reservoir. Anyway, so I'm going to leave the lid loose on it and start up now. Well, that's running pretty well, I'd say, and the water's coming out from the water pump. I looked outside. Right, so I stopped the generator, seemed to be running fairly happily, although the voltage was a little bit higher than I would have liked to have seen. So now I'm going to have a look inside the reservoir here, see how much water there is there, and maybe top it up. Well, I did a little bit of coolant, but not very much seemed to be needed. It's still below the top here, and I think I'll just close up now and try running it again. But fingers crossed, we seem to be okay. With the generator running fine, I went back to to try and get out the old impeller from the backup pump, and it was totally corroded, fixed in place. It just did not want to come, and major problem. Clearly the two metals, the brass of the impeller inside and the steel of the pump axle were completely stuck together. My only hope was to get it to a workshop, maybe with some better equipment that I had, and so that's in fact what happened. And taking it to a mechanic, it was cut. Some of the impeller was cut away, and after that it was possible to get the thing separated. There we are, so that's how it was, and then I do that, and then up it comes, yay! So here we have a jubilant Robert who finally managed to get the thing apart. Yeah, so between Angel cutting it in the garage and Robert having a go at it after that, we have a pump that works. That's great. So finally, I actually have now got my backup pump free of the impeller that was so badly stuck in place between the mechanic, Angel, in San Francisco, and Robert, with whom I was staying in San Francisco. I now have a backup pump ready to take a new impeller.